My name is Tiffany, and at 29 years old, I thought I had finally made peace with always feeling like an outsider in my adoptive family. That illusion shattered during my father's 60th birthday dinner at Boston's most exclusive restaurant. My sister Sophia stood up glass in hand and announced to everyone, "Tiffany, go find another table. This one's for family, not adopted girls." The words cut deeper than any knife, but that humiliating moment became the unexpected catalyst that changed my life forever. If you're watching from somewhere where family isn't always about blood drop, a comment below and let me know what family means to you. Also, hit that like button and subscribe if you want to hear how I turned the most humiliating dinner of my life into my greatest triumph. I was 3 years old when the Taylors adopted me from foster care. My birth parents had died in a car accident 6 months earlier, and I had bounced between temporary homes until Amanda and Richard Taylor welcomed me into their suburban Boston home. I have vague memories of that first day. Amanda's flowery perfume as she hugged me, Richard's booming laugh as he swung me around in their sunlit living room, and the pink bedroom they had prepared with a canopy bed and stuffed animals lining the windowsill. For about 2 years, everything seemed perfect. I called them Mom and Dad, learned to ride a bike in their driveway, and fell asleep each night feeling safe for the first time since losing my birth parents. In family videos from that time, you can see the genuine joy in all our faces, the way Richard would ruffle my curly hair affectionately, how Amanda would beam with pride when introducing me as our daughter. Everything changed when I turned 5 and Amanda gave birth to Sophia. I remember being excited about having a sister, naively believing we would become best friends. I even saved my allowance to buy a small teddy bear for the baby. But from the moment Sophia arrived, I sensed a shift in the family dynamic. The changes were subtle at first. My bedtime stories became rushed affairs, while Sophia received elaborate tuck-ins with multiple books and songs. When relatives visited, I was quickly shuffled through introductions, while Sophia was passed around like a precious treasure. Comments like she has Richard's nose, and those are definitely to Amanda's eyes, became common reminders of a biological connection I would never share. By the time I entered first grade, the differences in our treatment were unmistakable. Sophia received expensive ballet lessons at age 3, while my request for art classes was deemed not in the budget. Family photos gradually repositioned me from center to edge, sometimes requiring a second look to spot me in the corner. During my parent-teacher conferences, Amanda and Richard attended out of obligation, but for Sophia's preschool events, they rearranged work schedules and arrived early with cameras ready. When I was 8, James was born. Another biological child for the Taylors, another shift in family dynamics. By this point, I had unconsciously accepted my role as the outsider, the helper. I became the designated babysitter, expected to watch Sophia while my parents doted on baby James. My homework took place at the kitchen table amid chaos, while Sophia received quiet study time with parental assistance in the home office. Christmas mornings told the clearest story of where I stood. One year, when I was 11, I received a practical winter coat and school supplies, while 5-year-old Sophia unwrapped an expensive dollhouse, and 6-year-old James got the latest gaming system. I pretended not to notice, focusing, instead, on being grateful for what I had. But the message was clear. I was an obligation, not a joy. I discovered that academic excellence might be my path to parental approval. I threw myself into schoolwork, bringing home straight A's and academic awards. My parents acknowledged these achievements with brief nods or distracted good jobs, but the same week that I won the regional science fair, Sophia learned to ride a bike without training wheels, and that accomplishment earned a celebration. Dinner and endless retellings to friends and family. Through it all, I developed a resilience that would later serve me well. I learned to validate my own achievements to find worth in my abilities rather than others' approval. Yet beneath my growing self-reliance lay a persistent ache, a longing to be embraced as fully as my siblings were. Each night, I would lie in bed and imagine a parallel universe where the Taylors looked at me with the same adoration they showed Sophia and James, where my adoption was a cherished story rather than an unspoken asterisk on my identity. By the time I reached middle school, I had mastered the art of emotional self-sufficiency. I created internal celebrations for my achievements, set personal goals, and quietly pursued them without fanfare. But no matter how independent I became, part of me still yearned for the warmth of true belonging, of family love, without conditions or comparisons. That yearning would follow me for years, a shadow companion on my journey toward finding my true place in the world. High school should have been a fresh start, but instead it magnified the divide between me and my adoptive family. While I immersed myself in academics, debate team, and yearbook staff, Sophia blossomed into the quintessential popular girl, beautiful, socially adept, and increasingly entitled. At 14, 3 years, my junior, she already commanded a social power I never possessed. My junior year, I was awarded the prestigious Johnson Memorial Scholarship for academic excellence. When I rushed home to share the news, a scholarship that would cover half my college expenses, my mother glanced up from helping Sophia with her makeup for a middle school dance and said, "That's nice, honey. Can you keep it down? Sophia needs to focus on getting ready." Later that evening, my father spent 30 minutes photographing Sophia in her party dress, but forgot to attend my debate championship the following week. The growing divide became painfully obvious during the college application process. Over dinner one night, my parents enthusiastically discussed the Ivy League schools they hoped Sophia would attend in a few years and the legacy connections they planned to leverage. When I mentioned my interest in Northwestern, my father frowned. "You know we can't afford expensive out-of-state tuition, Tiffany," he said between bites of pot roast. "The community college has a perfectly good business program." "But you just said you're saving for Sophia to go to Brown," I pointed out, instantly regretting my words. "That's different," my mother interjected. "We've been planning for our children's education since before they were born." The words "our children" hung in the air, the unspoken distinction between me and my siblings palpable. I excused myself from the table and cried silently in my bedroom, then returned to my college applications with renewed determination. Sophia's cruelty reached new heights during my senior year. One incident stands out with particular clarity: prom night. After months of saving from my part-time job at the local bookstore, I had purchased a simple but elegant blue dress. The night before prom, I returned from a study group to find my dress soaked with cranberry juice, a conspicuously emptied juice bottle on Sophia's desk. When I confronted her, tears streaming down my face, she feigned innocence. "It must have been an accident," she said with mock concern. "Maybe you shouldn't have left it hanging on the door like that." My parents predictably accepted her version of events. My father handed me $60 and suggested I find something at the mall the next morning, as if a last-minute purchase could replace weeks of anticipation and saving. I ended up wearing a borrowed dress from a friend the entire evening, tainted by the morning's humiliation. School offered little refuge from family tensions. Somehow Sophia had spread the story of my adoption throughout her middle school, embellishing it with fictional details about me being unwanted and abandoned. These rumors eventually reached my high school, leading to whispers and occasional taunts from classmates who had never bothered to know me. Even academic accomplishments became battlegrounds. During my senior year, I worked tirelessly on a science project exploring sustainable urban water management. The project won first place at the state competition and earned me recognition from local environmental organizations. 2 years later, I discovered Sophia had submitted a nearly identical project for her freshman science fair, claiming it as her original work and even using some of my research materials I had stored in the basement. When she won, my parents took the entire family out to celebrate her exceptional creativity. James, meanwhile, learned from Sophia's example. By the time he reached middle school, he had adopted her dismissive attitude toward me, referring to me as the roommate rather than his sister. When I helped him with math homework or drove him to soccer practice, his thanks were perfunctory at best, non-existent at worst. The one bright spot during those difficult years was my English teacher, Miss Daniels. She recognized something in me that my family seemed blind to: potential resilience and a hunger for validation. After class one day, she handed me information about Northwestern's scholarship programs. "You have what it takes, Tiffany," she told me, her kind eyes meeting mine. "Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." With Miss Daniels' encouragement and recommendation letters, I applied to 7 universities, including Northwestern. I spent nights after my family had gone to bed perfecting essays and researching financial aid options. When acceptance letters arrived in spring, including one from Northwestern with a full academic scholarship, I allowed myself a moment of pure joy before the reality of sharing the news with my family dampened my spirits. The night I announced my college decision at dinner, my parents exchanged concerned glances. "Chicago is very far," my mother noted, not quite meeting my eyes. "And who will help with James and Sophia when we need a sitter?" "I'm sure you'll manage," I responded, struggling to keep the bitterness from my voice. The summer before college passed in a blur of preparation and anticipation. While my parents took Sophia on a 2-week European vacation to broaden her cultural horizons, I worked double shifts at the bookstore to save for expenses my scholarship wouldn't cover. They returned with stories and souvenirs for James, barely acknowledging my impending departure. When August arrived, I packed my life into 2 suitcases and a duffel bag. No one offered to drive me to the airport, so I called a taxi. As I stood in the driveway waiting, my mother hurried out with a perfunctory hug and a $50 bill. My father waved from the doorway, already turning back to whatever had occupied his attention inside. Sophia didn't bother to say goodbye, and James offered a distracted high five before returning to his video game. As the taxi pulled away from the only home I had known since age 3, I felt an equal measure of heartbreak and liberation. The family I had spent 16 years trying to please had made it clear where I stood in their hierarchy of affection. Now heading toward an unknown future in Chicago, I wondered if I would ever experience the unconditional love and acceptance I had craved for so long. The moment I stepped onto Northwestern's campus, I felt a strange mixture of terror and exhilaration. My entire life had been contained within a 10-mile radius in suburban Boston, and now I stood alone in Chicago, 1,000 miles from everything familiar. The campus sprawled before me, Lake Michigan glittering in the distance, students streaming past with confident purpose, while I clutched my campus map with sweaty hands. My dorm room in Elder Hall would be my first experience sharing space with someone who wasn't family. When I pushed open the door, a whirlwind of energy greeted me. Ashley Johnson, my randomly assigned roommate, was already in full decoration mode. Fairy lights strung across her side of the room, and a colorful tapestry half hung on the wall. "You must be Tiffany," she exclaimed, abandoning her project to envelop me in an unexpected hug. "I was beginning to think you were a ghost roommate. Here I saved you the bed by the window, better morning light." That first simple act of consideration, saving me the better bed, caught me off guard. It was more thoughtfulness than I had experienced from Sophia in years. Those initial weeks were a steep learning curve. I had always been responsible for myself, but navigating a major university, managing coursework, and building a social life from scratch tested my independence in new ways. Ashley became my unofficial guide, pulling me along to campus events when I would have stayed in studying, introducing me to her growing circle of friends, and insisting I participate in the full college experience. "You work too hard," she declared one Friday night, physically removing the business textbook from my hands. "We're going to that party at Lincoln Hall, and you're going to have fun if it kills you." I went reluctantly, but discovered something unexpected. People who knew nothing about my past, who saw me simply as Tiffany, not as the adopted outsider. In their eyes, I was interesting, smart, even fun once I let my guard down. These new friendships felt different. Chosen rather than obligated, based on genuine connection rather than family ties. My business classes revealed another surprise. I had a natural aptitude for marketing. Professor Wilson singled out my campaign analysis in our Principles of Marketing class, asking me to present my approach to the entire lecture hall. Standing at the front of 200 students, I found my voice steady, my ideas flowing with a confidence I had never felt at home. "You have an intuitive understanding of consumer psychology," Professor Wilson told me afterward. "Have you considered specializing in digital marketing? The field is evolving rapidly, and minds like yours will shape its future." His words planted a seed that would later grow into my career path. I declared a marketing major, with a digital media specialization, throwing myself into coursework that finally felt aligned with my natural abilities. Contact with my family dwindled to occasional text messages and brief awkward phone calls on holidays. My mother would provide surface-level updates about James's soccer tournaments and Sophia's social achievements, rarely asking about my life in Chicago. When I mentioned making the dean's list my first semester, she responded with, "That's nice, dear. Did you get the photos I sent of Sophia's Sweet 16 party?" The contrast between my family's indifference and my growing success became increasingly apparent. While they forgot my 20th birthday entirely, my college friends organized a surprise celebration at our favorite pizza place. When I landed a competitive summer internship with a Chicago marketing firm, my family's response was a perfunctory "good job," while Professor Wilson took me to lunch to celebrate and discuss my professional future. Holiday breaks presented a new dilemma. The cost of flying home to a lukewarm reception seemed increasingly unjustifiable, but the thought of remaining alone in a nearly empty dormitory was equally unappealing. Ashley solved this problem during our sophomore year Thanksgiving break. "You're coming home with me," she announced, brooking no argument. "My mom already asked about your dietary restrictions and my dad's clearing space in the guest room." That Thanksgiving with the Johnsons in their Milwaukee home revealed what family could be. They incorporated me into their traditions effortlessly, giving me a role in the meal preparation, including me in inside jokes, treating my opinions and stories with genuine interest to Mrs. Johnson even placed a framed photo of Ashley and me from a campus event on their mantel alongside other family pictures. "You're Ashley's sister now," Mr. Johnson said simply when he caught me staring at the photo. "That makes you family." I cried in the guest bathroom that night, overwhelmed by the casual acceptance I had craved my entire life. The summer after junior year, I secured an internship at Digital Pulse, a prestigious marketing firm specializing in emerging technology clients. My supervisor, Natalie Rivera, quickly recognized my analytical abilities and creative approach to campaign strategy. By midsummer, she had assigned me to assist on major client accounts an unusual level of responsibility for an intern. You have a unique perspective, she told me during my performance review. You see connections others miss, and you're not afraid to challenge conventional approaches. During that internship, I identified a gap in the digital marketing landscape. Most firms treated all clients with the same generic strategy template, ignoring the unique characteristics of their audience demographics and engagement patterns. I began developing a concept for adaptive digital marketing that would use real-time data to personalize campaigns at an unprecedented level. When I shared my concept with Natalie, she connected me with Jordan Winters, a venture capitalist who specialized in marketing technology. Our first meeting stretched from a scheduled 30 minutes to 3 hours as we refined the business model and potential applications. By the end of the summer, Jordan had verbally committed to providing seed funding if I developed a formal business plan after graduation. My senior year passed in a blur of finalizing my business concept, completing coursework, and applying to accelerator programs for emerging entrepreneurs. The contrast between my professional momentum and family disinterest reached its peak when I graduated with honors, walking across the stage to receive my diploma with no family members in attendance. Emergency plumbing issue, my mother explained vaguely when I called the night before commencement. And Sophia has her dance recital this weekend. You understand. I did understand, all too clearly. Ashley's parents attended with flowers and took us both to a celebratory dinner, treating my achievement as something worth marking, Mrs. Johnson even prepared a scrapbook of my college years filled with photos, ticket stubs, and mementos Ashley had helped collect. "We're so proud of you, Mrs. Johnson," said, squeezing my hand across the table. "Whatever comes next, you have people in your corner." With graduation behind me, I took the leap into entrepreneurship, incorporating adaptive edge marketing with Jordan's seed investment. I rented a tiny studio apartment in Chicago's Wicker Park neighborhood and converted half the living space into an office. 16-hour days became my norm as I built the business from concept to reality, developing proprietary algorithms and pitching to potential clients. The first year was brutal. Moments of promising progress, followed by crushing setbacks, technical challenges that kept me awake for days, and the constant fear that I had overestimated my abilities. But slowly, client by client, success by success, Adaptive Edge gained traction. My innovative approach to personalized marketing campaigns began generating results that traditional methods couldn't match, attracting attention from larger clients. Through it all, I maintained minimal contact with my biological family while building a chosen family of friends, mentors, and colleagues who valued me for exactly who I was. When Ashley got engaged to her college boyfriend, she asked me to be her maid of honor. When I signed my first 6-figure client contract, Natalie and Jordan took me to dinner to celebrate. These were the people who showed up, who saw me, who celebrated my victories, and supported me through defeats. By age 26, 3 years after graduation, I had built Adaptive Edge into a respected boutique agency with 12 employees and a growing client list. The hole in my heart where family acceptance should have been hadn't disappeared entirely, but it had shrunk, filled partially by the meaningful connections I had formed and the life I had created for myself. Then came the phone call that would set in motion the most painful and ultimately transformative night of my adult life. An invitation to my father's 60th birthday celebration at the Grand Boston's most exclusive restaurant. After years of distance, my family suddenly wanted my presence at their table, though I would soon discover their motivations had nothing to do with reconciliation. 3 years of relentless work had transformed Adaptive Edge from a one-woman operation in a studio apartment to a thriving boutique agency occupying the entire 15th floor of a downtown Chicago office building. My team had grown to 23 employees, brilliant, passionate people who shared my vision for revolutionizing digital marketing through adaptive algorithms and real-time personalization. The breakthrough came when we landed Vertex Technologies, a rising star in the consumer electronics sector, struggling with market differentiation. Our approach increased their conversion rates by 78% in just 3 months, generating industry buzz and a case study that attracted attention from bigger potential clients. Suddenly, companies that had ignored my cold calls were reaching out to schedule meetings. Then came the profile in Business Insider, 30 Under 30 Meet Tiffany Taylor, the adopted outsider, revolutionizing digital marketing. The article detailed not just my business innovations, but also touched on my personal journey from feeling unwanted in my adoptive family to building a company culture centered on belonging and validation. I hadn't intended to share so much of my personal history with the journalist, but something in her questions unlocked stories I had kept private for years. The morning the article published online, my phone nearly exploded with notifications, congratulatory messages from colleagues, inquiries from potential clients, and even a few interview requests from other publications. I was reviewing these messages in my office when an unexpected name appeared on my screen: Mom. Amanda Taylor had not contacted me directly in over 8 months, our communication limited to group texts about holidays and the occasional stilted phone call. "Tiffany, it's Mom," she said when I answered her voice, carrying the same slightly distracted tone I remembered as if her attention was partially elsewhere. "How are you, sweetie?" The casual endearment after years of emotional distance felt jarring. "I'm fine," I replied cautiously. "Is everything okay?" "Of course everything's wonderful. Actually, that's why I'm calling. Your father is turning 60 next month, and we're planning a special dinner at the Grand on the 16th. The whole family will be there. Aunts, uncles, cousins, and we'd love for you to join us." The invitation caught me off guard. I had missed the last 3 family gatherings with barely a comment from my parents. That's unexpected. "Well, it's an important milestone," she continued. "And Sophia is bringing Bradley. You know her fiancé from the Harrington family. They've just set a date for next spring." Her voice carried the unmistakable note of maternal pride that had never colored her mentions of my achievements. "I saw the article about your company," she added after a pause. "Richard showed it to me. You've certainly done well for yourself." The pieces clicked into place. The Business Insider profile had mentioned Adaptive Edge's valuation after our latest funding round. For the first time, my adoptive family was seeing me not just as their outsider daughter, but as someone with tangible success, someone worth acknowledging publicly. "I'll check my schedule," I said, noncommittally, promising to text her my decision in the next few days. After ending the call, I immediately contacted Dr. Faye Harris, the therapist, who had helped me process my family dynamics since my second year of college. We scheduled an emergency session that evening. "What do you hope to gain from attending Dr. Harris?" asked, as I sat in her comfortable office, twisting a tissue between my fingers. "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me hopes they've changed, that they're finally ready to see me as equal to Sophia and James. Another part suspects this is about appearances, now that I have some public recognition. And if it's the latter," she pressed gently, "then I need to be prepared to protect myself," I said, the realization solidifying as I spoke. "I need boundaries." We spent the session developing strategies for maintaining emotional equilibrium during the dinner, recognition of triggers, permission to step away if needed, and prearranged check-ins with supportive friends. I left with a clearer perspective on my expectations and limits. The following weekend, I went shopping for something to wear to the dinner. The pragmatic part of me knew this was just clothing, but emotionally I needed armor. Something that would make me feel confident and successful when facing the family that had made me feel inadequate for so long. I found it in a boutique on Michigan Avenue. A perfectly tailored midnight blue suit with subtle silver threading that caught the light when I moved. It projected exactly the image I wanted: successful, composed, untouchable. The saleswoman added a simple silver pendant necklace that rested just at my collarbone. "Whoever you're dressing to impress," she said, with a knowing smile, "they won't be able to take their eyes off you." "I'm dressing to remind myself of who I am." I corrected her, gently admiring the final effect in the mirror. As the dinner date approached, Ashley voiced her concerns during our weekly brunch. "I don't trust them," she said bluntly, stabbing a piece of waffle with unnecessary force. "After everything they've put you through, this sudden interest feels convenient." "I know," I acknowledged, "but I need to see for myself if anything has changed." "Promise you'll call me if things go sideways," she insisted. "I can have a fake emergency ready that requires your immediate attention in Chicago." Her protective instinct warmed me. "I promise. But I think I need to handle this on my own." The night before my flight to Boston, I rehearsed potential scenarios in my mind. Gracious acknowledgement of success, awkward, small talk, outright hostility, or worst of all, the same subtle dismissal that had characterized most of my childhood. I packed my emotional toolkit alongside my carefully selected outfit breathing techniques, visualization, exercises, and the grounding mantra, "Doctor." Harris had helped me develop. Their treatment reflects their limitations, not my worth. The morning of the 16th, I flew from Chicago to Boston, watching the landscape change beneath the plane. The familiar geography of Massachusetts stirred a complex mixture of nostalgia and anxiety. I had arranged for a rental car rather than asking for a family pickup, another small assertion of independence. Driving through Boston toward the restaurant, I passed landmarks from my earlier life. My high school, the park where I used to read when I needed to escape, the bookstore where I had worked during summers. Each site carried memories, but they felt distant, now belonging to a different version of myself. I arrived at the Grand, 30 minutes early, deliberately giving myself time to acclimate. The restaurant occupied the top floor of one of Boston's most prestigious addresses, its entrance marked by understated elegance rather than flashy signage. The maitre d' confirmed my reservation and offered to seat me at the table to wait for the rest of my party. "The Taylors have requested the Westview private dining room," he informed me, leading me through the main dining area with its sweeping views of the Boston skyline at sunset. "The rest of your party should be arriving shortly." Alone in the opulent private room, I took deep breaths and reminded myself that I was no longer the insecure adopted daughter desperate for approval. I was Tiffany Taylor, founder and CEO of a successful company, a woman who had built a life of meaning and connection despite not because of her family. 20 minutes later, the door opened and they began to arrive. First, my parents, Amanda, looking elegant if slightly strained, Richard, boisterous and commanding as always. Then aunts, uncles, cousins I barely recognized from brief holiday encounters years ago. Finally, Sophia and a tall, conventionally handsome man I assumed was Bradley, followed by James, now a university student himself. "Tiffany," my mother exclaimed, with a brightness that didn't quite reach her eyes, "you look professional." The slight hesitation communicated volumes. "Successful business owner now, aren't you?" my father said, clapping me awkwardly on the shoulder. "Always had a good head for numbers." The greeting set the tone for the initial interactions, superficial warmth layered over emotional distance comments that acknowledged my presence without engaging with me as a full person. My relatives, taking cues from my immediate family, offered variations of, "We've heard you're doing well in Chicago," without asking any specific questions about my life. As waitstaff began serving champagne and appetizers, I settled into the familiar role I had played at family gatherings throughout my life, present but peripheral, smiling and nodding at appropriate intervals while the real conversation flowed around me rather than to me. The only difference was that now I recognized the dynamic for what it was, no longer blaming myself for failing to earn their interest. Then Sophia approached, pulling Bradley along by the hand. "Tiffany," she said, with the same saccharine tone she had perfected in high school, "I want you to meet my fiancé, Bradley Harrington. Bradley, this is my adopted sister, Tiffany." The unnecessary emphasis on adopted was deliberate, a boundary marker that classified me as something other than true family. I extended my hand to Bradley, who took it with the firm grip of someone who had been taught proper handshakes in prep school. "Harrington," I noted. "From Harrington Investment Group." Bradley's eyebrows raised slightly in surprise. "Yes, my father's firm. You're familiar with it." "We crossed paths during my last funding round," I explained. "They declined to participate, but I appreciated their thoroughness in the evaluation process." A flicker of recognition crossed his face. Adaptive edge. "That was you, small world." Sophia's expression tightened almost imperceptibly. She had clearly hoped to impress me with her fiancé's prestigious connections, not discover I had professional history with his family. "Bradley's family has a summer house in the Hamptons," she interjected, steering the conversation back to social status. "We're thinking of having the wedding there next June." "How lovely," I replied, with genuine politeness if not enthusiasm. "Congratulations to you both." As we moved to take our seats for dinner, I noticed the strategic placement. My parents at the head of the table, with Sophia and Bradley to their right, James to their left, and me further down next to distant cousins I barely knew. The physical positioning mirrored the emotional hierarchy that had defined our family for as long as I could remember. The evening was young, but already I sensed that some dynamics never truly change. They simply evolve into more sophisticated versions of the same fundamental pattern. As the first course was served, I steeled myself for what promised to be a lengthy performance of family closeness that excluded me, in all but name unaware that the true test of my resilience was yet to come. The first course arrived. Delicate scallops on beds of saffron risotto, artfully presented with microgreens and a balsamic reduction. As conversation flowed around the table, I maintained a pleasant expression while observing the family dynamics with the detached perspective my years away had granted me. My father dominated the conversation, as always regaling the table with stories of his recent golf tournament victory and business successes. "The Johnson account nearly went to our competitors," he announced, gesturing with his fork. But once they sat down with me, they knew where the real expertise was. The familiar self-congratulatory tone sparked a childhood memory of sitting through countless dinners, listening to similar pronouncements, trained to respond with appropriate admiration. My mother played her accustomed supporting role, adding relevant details to his stories and managing the social mechanics of the gathering. "Richard, tell them about the charity gala." Last month she prompted, seamlessly maintaining the flow of conversation that kept attention on the family's social achievements. Sophia, seated in the position of honor beside our parents, periodically glanced my way with thinly veiled assessment. Her engagement ring caught the light deliberately, each time she reached for her wine glass. Her body language oriented toward our parents, as if to physically reinforce her centrality in the family structure. "Tiffany," my Aunt Margaret called from across the table, "Amanda tells me you're doing something with computers in Chicago." Before I could respond, Sophia interjected. "She works in advertising." Like Mad Men, but with Facebook. Her dismissive tone reduced my innovative business model and years of entrepreneurial struggle to a simplistic caricature. Actually, I responded evenly. Adaptive Edge develops proprietary algorithms that personalize digital marketing in real time based on user behavior patterns. We've recently been nominated for the Brennan Innovation Award in marketing technology. A brief silence followed, broken by my father clearing his throat. Speaking of awards, James's soccer team is competing in the regional finals next weekend. Third consecutive year they've qualified. The swift redirection was familiar. My achievements acknowledged barely long enough for politeness before attention returned to my siblings. I had anticipated this dynamic and found it affected me less than it once had. The validation I had craved from them had been supplanted by recognition from people whose opinions I now valued more highly. As the second course arrived, Sophia began commenting on my appearance with the same passive-aggressive approach she had perfected in high school. "That suit is so practical," she observed her tone, suggesting this was not a compliment. "I always think women look better in dresses for special occasions. Don't you agree, Mom?" "You look perfectly fine, dear," my mother responded diplomatically. "Not everyone is comfortable in more feminine styles." I smiled, refusing to engage with the implied criticism. "I find good tailoring works for any occasion." "Bradley, I understand your father expanded the firm's technology portfolio last quarter. Any interesting acquisitions in the marketing space?" Bradley seemed grateful for the respite from family tension. "Actually, yes. We've taken positions in several AI-driven analytics platforms. Your sector is attracting significant investment attention." Sophia, visibly annoyed at losing control of the conversation, placed her hand possessively on Bradley's arm. "Honey, you promised not to talk business tonight. It's Daddy's birthday." My father chose this moment to stand for a toast, champagne flute in hand. "I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. 60 years on this earth, and I count myself blessed with success in business, and more importantly, in family." His gaze swept the table, lingering on Sophia and James, before passing over me with barely a pause. "To my wonderful wife Amanda, my beautiful daughter Sophia, and her fiancé Bradley, and my son James, who makes me proud every day." The conspicuous omission of my name in the toast wasn't surprising, but it crystallized what I had long known. In his mind, I existed adjacent to the family, not within it. I raised my glass, along with everyone else, maintaining composure, while acknowledging the familiar ache of exclusion. As the main course was served, perfectly cooked filet mignon for most guests, while I had selected the sea base, Sophia began showcasing her relationship with Bradley to the extended family. "We're thinking of starting a family right away." After the wedding, she announced, her voice carrying deliberately to my end of the table. "Bradley and I both believe in strong family resemblances. His jawline and my eyes would make such beautiful children." Speaking of resemblances, my Uncle Robert joined in, slightly loose from several glasses of wine. "It's remarkable how much James looks like Richard at that age. And Sophia has Amanda's exact smile." "Good genes," my father agreed, raising his glass again. "It's fascinating how genetics work." Sophia continued, her gaze, now fixed directly on me. "Blood really does tell, doesn't it?" The pointed comment hung in the air, its target unmistakable. I noticed a few uncomfortable glances exchanged among the extended family members, but no one challenged the increasingly obvious barbs. As the alcohol flowed more freely, the pretense of politeness began to dissolve. James, emboldened by several beers, joined his sister's campaign. "Remember when Tiffany tried out for Family Resemblance Day at school?" He laughed, addressing the table at large. "The teacher thought she was in the wrong group." James, my mother murmured half-heartedly, but she was smiling even as she attempted to moderate. The conversation gradually shifted to Sophia's wedding plans, with detailed discussions of the Harrington family connections and the exclusive guest list. The governor might attend, Sophia mentioned casually. Bradley's father golfs with him regularly. Such a perfect match, my mother beamed. We always knew Sophia would marry well. Bradley, to his credit, looked increasingly uncomfortable with the family dynamic. Tiffany, he said during a lull, I looked up your company after we were introduced. The personalization engine you've developed is impressive. Have you considered expanding into the financial services sector? His genuine interest in my work seemed to trigger something in Sophia. She drained her third glass of wine and set it down with unnecessary force. God, Bradley, nobody cares about marketing algorithms at a birthday dinner. This is family time. The emphasis on family was unmistakable. The waiter approached to clear plates and inquire about dessert preferences. In that brief interlude of activity, Sophia leaned over to whisper something to our father, who nodded with a slight frown in my direction. The tension at the table had reached a palpable level, and I considered Dr. Harris's advice about recognizing when to step away. Perhaps a brief visit to the restroom would provide necessary emotional distance. Before I could excuse myself, Sophia stood champagne glass in hand, commanding attention with the practiced ease of someone accustomed to being the center of attention. Since we're celebrating family tonight, she announced, her words slightly slurred, but her aim precise. I'd like to make a special toast to Daddy on his birthday. She paused for dramatic effect, her gaze sweeping the table before landing on me. Family is everything to the Taylors. We stand by each other, we support each other, we share the same blood and history. My stomach tightened, anticipating what was coming. I maintained eye contact, refusing to show the hurt I knew she was trying to inflict. Which is why she continued, her voice taking on a harder edge. It's so important to recognize who truly belongs and who is just adjacent. She gestured expansively with her glass. This table represents generations of Taylor and Harrington legacy that continues through blood. An uncomfortable silence descended on the table. Even my parents seemed taken aback by the directness of her attack. The moment stretched, tension building, until Sophia delivered the final blow. Tiffany, go find another table, she said loudly, the alcohol removing any filter. This one's for family, not adopted girls. The silence that followed was absolute. Waitstaff froze in their movements. Glasses paused midway to lips, all eyes shifting between Sophia's triumphant expression and my stunned face. In that suspended moment, I felt a familiar childhood sensation, the desperate wish to become invisible, to dissolve, rather than absorb the public humiliation. Then, almost worse than the statement itself, came the response. Uncomfortable laughter, rippling around the table. My father's half-hearted Sophia, that's enough, undermined by his failure to truly censure her, my mother's embarrassed smile, directed at nearby tables, rather than any concern for my feelings. I sat perfectly still, years of practice, helping me maintain a composed exterior while internally processing the shock. This wasn't just a casual slight. It was a deliberate public exiling from the family unit. Just as I was formulating a response that would allow me to leave with dignity, the head waiter approached our table carrying a leather portfolio. With professional neutrality that somehow conveyed both respect and sympathy, he placed it directly in front of me rather than my father. The evening's charges as requested, he said quietly. I opened the portfolio to find a bill for $5,120. The entire family dinner, including multiple bottles of expensive wine and premium menu selections. My father had apparently arranged in advance for the bill to be presented to me, the successful business owner, rather than himself, the birthday celebrant. The final indignity clarified everything. I had been invited not for reconciliation or family connection, but as a convenient solution to an expensive evening. My business success, which they had consistently minimized verbally, was deemed substantial enough to justify extracting financial benefit. All eyes were on me as I examined the bill. Sophia's expression held particular satisfaction, as if this final humiliation completed her victory. My father avoided eye contact entirely, suddenly fascinated by the dessert menu. My mother glanced nervously between us, clearly hoping I would handle the situation quietly without creating a scene. In that pivotal moment, I made a decision that would reshape my relationship with the Taylors forever. I smiled, took a deliberate sip of water, and removed my corporate credit card from my wallet. With perfect composure, I signed the bill, including a generous tip for the staff who had witnessed my humiliation. "Thank you for a lovely evening," I said, rising from my chair with deliberate grace. "I wish you all the best." As I turned to leave dignity intact, despite their best efforts, I heard a deep voice behind me. "Just a moment, please. Just a moment, please." I turned to find a distinguished man in his early 50s standing nearby his tailored suit and confident bearing marking him as someone of significance. His expression was one of controlled anger, though not directed at me. "Marcus Edwards," he introduced himself with a slight nod. "I'm the owner of the Grand." A ripple of recognition passed around the table. Marcus Edwards was not just a successful restaurateur, but a prominent figure in Boston's business community. His restaurant empire, featuring in luxury magazines and business profiles alike. "Mr. Edwards," my father said, his voice shifting to the deferential tone he reserved for those he considered important. "What an honor. I hope everything has been satisfactory with our celebration." Marcus ignored him completely, focusing his attention solely on me. "Miss Taylor, might I have a word with you privately?" Confused but intrigued, I nodded and followed him to a small private lounge adjacent to the dining area. Once the door closed behind us, his formal demeanor softened slightly. "I normally don't intervene in guests' private matters," he began, gesturing for me to take a seat in one of the plush chairs, "but I couldn't stand by and watch what happened in there." "You overheard?" I asked, embarrassment heating my cheeks despite my attempt at composure. "More than overheard. I was at the next table having dinner with investors." He paused, seeming to consider his next words carefully. "What your sister said about adoption struck a particular chord with me." Marcus reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew his phone, opening it to a photo of himself with an Asian woman and two teenage children of visibly different racial backgrounds than their parents. "My wife and I adopted both our children," he said simply. "They are our family in every way that matters, regardless of biology. Anyone who suggests otherwise." His jaw tightened momentarily. "Well, let's just say I find such attitudes personally offensive." The unexpected connection momentarily overwhelmed my careful emotional control. "Thank you for saying that." I managed blinking back sudden tears. "I also read the Business Insider profile on you last week," he continued, surprising me further. "Your work with adaptive marketing algorithms is exactly what my restaurant group has been looking for. We've been trying to refine our digital outreach to better target the right customers for each of our 12 locations." The conversation's sudden turn to business gave me a moment to regain my equilibrium. "You're interested in Adaptive Edge's services?" "Very much so. We've been through 3 marketing agencies in the past 2 years, none of whom understood the unique positioning challenges of luxury dining establishments across different demographic regions." He smiled slightly. It seems Providence that you're both the solution to our marketing needs and someone I particularly want to do business with after tonight's display. The synchronicity was startling, from the depths of family rejection to an unexpected professional opportunity in the span of minutes. I would certainly be interested in discussing how we could help your restaurant group, I responded, professional instincts engaging despite the emotional turmoil of the evening. Excellent. But first, he said, standing decisively, let's address the immediate situation. That bill you just paid is being refunded immediately. No argument, he added, as I began to protest. And I believe your family deserves to understand exactly who they've been dismissing. Before I could formulate a response, Marcus opened the lounge door and gestured for me to precede him back to the dining room. The Taylor family tableau remained largely unchanged, my parents looking uncomfortable but not contrite, Sophia sulking at being temporarily abandoned as the center of attention, James scrolling through his phone under the table. They looked up as we approached, curiosity evident on their faces. Mr. and Mrs. Taylor Marcus addressed my parents formally, his voice carrying the natural authority of someone accustomed to command. I wanted to personally inform you that tonight's bill has been voided. I cannot, in good conscience, charge Miss Taylor for an evening where she was treated with such disrespect in my establishment. My father's expression cycled rapidly from confusion to embarrassment to calculation. That's very generous, Mr. Edwards, but unnecessary. A simple family disagreement, nothing more. On the contrary, Marcus replied coolly, what I witnessed was beyond disagreement. It was cruelty. And as it happens, Miss Taylor and I have just agreed to a business partnership that will be announced formally next week. Her company, Adaptive Edge Marketing, will be handling the digital strategy for all Edwards Restaurant Group properties going forward. The statement wasn't strictly accurate. We had discussed potential collaboration, not finalized a partnership, but the intent behind his public support was clear and deeply appreciated. Sophia, who had been watching with increasing dismay, attempted to reclaim control of the situation. That's wonderful, she said with manufactured brightness. We're all so proud of Tiffany's little business. I was just joking earlier, of course. Family humor. She laughed artificially. Tiffany knows I didn't mean anything by it. The transparent attempt to rewrite the evening's events in the face of a potentially valuable connection was so predictable it almost made me laugh. Marcus raised a skeptical eyebrow, but didn't directly challenge her claim. Miss Taylor, he said, turning to me, my executive team has an opening in our schedule tomorrow morning at 10. If you'd like to discuss the partnership details, we can have contracts ready for review by the end of the week. I look forward to it, I replied, the surreal turn of events still processing in my mind. Wonderful, he nodded, then addressed the table at large. Please enjoy the rest of your evening. The dessert course is complimentary. His tone made it clear this courtesy extended, despite his personal feelings, not because of them. As Marcus stepped away, my family's collective attention swiveled to me, their expressions recalibrating in real time from dismissal to reassessment. My father cleared his throat, entrepreneur to entrepreneur. Tiffany, you should have mentioned you knew Marcus Edwards. That's quite a connection. I didn't know him until tonight, I replied evenly. Some connections form through shared values rather than shared genetics. The pointed response landed as intended. My mother shifted uncomfortably, while Sophia's expression darkened. Bradley, to his credit, looked both impressed and slightly abashed on behalf of his future in-laws. Will you be staying for dessert? My mother asked, tentatively gesturing to the chair I had vacated. The question represented everything about our relationship. Surface politeness, masking fundamental rejection, followed by conditional acceptance based solely on external validation. For the first time, I saw with perfect clarity that nothing I could achieve would ever truly change how they saw me. The realization was both painful and freeing. "No," I said, simply gathering my purse. "I think we all understand where we stand now. I wish you a happy birthday, Richard. Goodbye." I turned and walked out of the restaurant without looking back, my steps growing steadier with each foot of distance between myself and the family that had never truly claimed me. In the elevator down to the lobby, the accumulated emotions of the evening finally surfaced: anger, hurt, vindication, and something unexpected: relief. The charade was over. No more pretending, no more hoping for acceptance that would never come. In my rental car, hands shaking slightly on the steering wheel, I finally allowed the tears to flow. Not sad tears, but the releasing kind that wash away old wounds. I called Ashley as promised. They were exactly who I thought they were, I told her through hiccuped breaths. But something amazing happened too. I recounted the evening's events, from Sophia's cruelty to Marcus's unexpected intervention and business opportunity. Ashley listened, alternating between outrage on my behalf and excitement about the potential partnership. "So basically, your toxic sister tried to humiliate you, and instead, you walked away with a major client and left them all with their jaws on the floor," she summarized, with satisfaction. "That's what I call karma. It doesn't fix everything," I admitted, driving toward my hotel. "But it helps to know that someone saw what happened and stood up for me. That's never happened before with them." "Because they've always controlled the narrative," Ashley said wisely. "This time, an outsider saw the truth." That night in my hotel room, I wrote a long email to my therapist, Dr. Harris, processing the evening's events and my decision to permanently distance myself from the Taylors. "I'm done trying to earn love from people incapable of giving it freely," I concluded. "It's time to invest fully in relationships built on mutual respect rather than obligation or biology." Her response came early the next morning. "Some doors need to close completely before others can fully open. I'm proud of your clarity and strength." At 10 o'clock, I arrived at the Edwards Restaurant Group headquarters for my meeting with Marcus and his executive team. The receptionist ushered me immediately into a spacious conference room overlooking Boston Harbor, where Marcus greeted me with professional warmth. "I want to apologize again for inserting myself into your family situation," he said once we were seated. "It was presumptuous, but I couldn't stand by silently." "Please don't apologize," I assured him. "Your intervention meant more than you know. Though I should clarify that we haven't actually established a business relationship yet, despite what you told my family." He smiled. "Consider it aspirational truth-telling. But I meant what I said about being impressed with your company's approach. We genuinely need what Adaptive Edge offers." For the next 2 hours, we discussed the restaurant group's marketing challenges and how my company's personalization algorithms could help target specific demographics for each location. By meeting's end, we had outlined a potential 6-month contract that would indeed make the Edwards Restaurant Group one of Adaptive Edge's largest clients. "I'll have my team draft the formal proposal today," I promised, as we concluded. "Excellent," and Tiffany Marcus added as we shook hands. "Success truly is the best revenge. But finding people who value you for exactly who you are, that's the real victory." As I left the building, I felt lighter than I had in years, as if the invisible tether connecting me to my adoptive family's approval had finally snapped, setting me free to move forward, unburdened by their expectations and limitations. 6 months after that fateful dinner at the Grand, my life had transformed in ways I could never have predicted. The partnership with Edwards Restaurant Group had exceeded all projections, their case study becoming a cornerstone of Adaptive Edge's marketing materials and attracting a wave of new, high-profile clients. We had expanded to 38 employees and opened a second office in New York with plans for a West Coast presence by year's end. But the professional success, gratifying as it was, paled in comparison to the personal growth that followed my clean break from the Taylors. After returning to Chicago from Boston, I had doubled down on therapy with Dr. Tyler's to 7. Harris finally confronting the deep-seated belief that I was somehow fundamentally unlovable, a conviction my adoptive family had reinforced throughout my childhood. The people who should have loved you unconditionally failed you, Dr. Harris said, during one particularly powerful session. That failure reflects their limitations, not your worthiness. Intellectually, I had always understood this principle, but emotionally accepting it proved more challenging. We worked through exercises designed to identify and challenge negative core beliefs, gradually replacing them with affirming truths based on evidence from my actual life experiences. I also joined a support group for adult adoptees, finding unexpected comfort in shared stories and common emotional patterns. The group met weekly in a community center near my apartment, 15 individuals from diverse backgrounds, united by the complex experience of navigating identity and belonging outside traditional family structures. Blood is just biology, said Miguel, a 35-year-old architect who had been adopted from Colombia as an infant. Family is who shows up for you, who sees you clearly, and loves you anyway. His words resonated deeply, affirming the chosen family I had built over the years. Ashley and her parents, my close-knit team at Adaptive Edge mentors like Natalie and Jordan, who had believed in my vision, and now Marcus, whose unexpected alliance had come at a pivotal moment. 3 months after the Boston incident, I established the Adaptive Edge Foundation with an initial personal contribution of $100,000. The foundation's mission was simple but meaningful, providing educational scholarships and entrepreneurial mentoring for adopted children and former foster youth pursuing business careers. Success shouldn't depend on family connections or inherited advantage, I explained to a journalist covering the foundation's launch. Sometimes, the greatest innovations come from those who had to create their own paths forward. The foundation's first 5 scholarship recipients included a former foster youth developing a clothing line, an international adoptee, creating translation software, and a domestic adoptee, building a platform connecting adoptees with cultural resources related to their heritage. Mentoring these young entrepreneurs became the most rewarding part of my week, allowing me to transform my painful experiences into guidance that might ease others' journeys. 4 months after the dinner, an unexpected email arrived from my mother. The subject line read simply, "Checking in," its casual tone, belying the years of emotional distance. Tiffany, we've been seeing your name in business publications and hearing about your foundation's work. Your father and I are very impressed with what you've accomplished. Perhaps we could meet for lunch next time you're in Boston. Sophia has been asking about you as well. Love, Mom. The transparent attempt at reconnection, now that I had achieved public recognition, might once have sparked hope. But I recognized it for what it was. The same conditional acceptance they had always offered now, repackaged in light of my teen success. After careful consideration and consultation with Dr. Harris, I crafted a response that established clear boundaries. Thank you for your message. I'm glad to hear you're well. At present, I'm focused on building relationships with people who value me for who I am, not what I've accomplished. If you're interested in a genuine relationship based on mutual respect, I would need to see acknowledgement of past patterns and a commitment to different interactions moving forward. I wish you all the best, Tiffany. I never received a reply confirming what I had already known. Their interest extended only as far as the reflected glory my success might provide. The realization brought a strange peace, rather than pain, closing a chapter that had remained unresolved for too long. The most unexpected development came 5 months after the Boston dinner, in the form of a handwritten letter from James, now in his junior year at a state university. "Tiffany," he wrote, in uneven script that suggested multiple drafts, "I've been thinking about what happened at Dad's birthday dinner and about how I treated you growing up. I followed Sophia's lead because it was easier than thinking for myself, and I'm ashamed of that now. My psychology professor showed us your foundation's website as an example of turning adversity into purpose, and I didn't even have the courage to say you were my sister. I don't expect forgiveness, but I wanted you to know I recognize how wrong we were. If you're ever willing to talk, I'd like to apologize properly." Unlike my parents' superficial overture, James's letter suggested genuine reflection. After 2 weeks of consideration, I called him beginning a cautious rebuilding process based on adult terms rather than childhood dynamics. Our initial conversations were awkward, but sincere, both of us learning to relate as individuals rather than through the roles assigned by family structure. "Sophia still doesn't get it," he admitted during our third phone call. "She says you're being dramatic and holding grudges. But I've been reading about adoption and family psychology. I want to understand your experience better." His willingness to educate himself and question family narratives indicated growth I hadn't expected. While we weren't close, our occasional communication offered a reminder that people could change if they chose to do the necessary work. On the 1-year anniversary of the dinner at the Grand, I took the day off work and drove to Lake Michigan, finding a quiet spot along the shore to reflect on the journey of the past 12 months. The chilly October wind whipped across the water, but the sun shone brightly, creating a fitting metaphor for this period of my life. Challenging, but clarifying, painful, yet illuminating. I had prepared a small ritual writing on slips of paper, the limiting beliefs and unhealthy patterns I wanted to release, the need for validation from people incapable of providing it, the habit of minimizing my achievements, the reflexive assumption that I was somehow less deserving of love. One by one, I tore these papers into tiny pieces and let the wind carry them away over the water, symbolically releasing their hold on my future. In their place, I had written affirmations on smooth stones collected during morning walks. I am worthy of unconditional love. I create my own belonging. My value is inherent, not earned. These I kept a tangible reminder of the truths I was still learning to fully embody. That evening, I hosted a dinner in my apartment for the people who had become my true family, Ashley and her husband Michael, my close friend and company COO Layla Marcus and his wife Elaine, who happened to be in Chicago for a restaurant opening, and 2 members of my adoption support group who had become dear friends. We shared a meal around my dining table, conversation flowing easily among people connected, not by biology, but by choice and mutual respect. "I propose a toast," Marcus said, raising his glass. "To Tiffany, who showed us all that family is built through love, not born through circumstance." As glasses clinked and warm smiles surrounded me, I felt a sense of belonging more genuine than anything I had experienced in the Taylor household. The painful dinner a year earlier had forced me to finally acknowledge what I had always known, that trying to earn love from people determined to withhold it was a losing proposition. In letting go of that futile effort, I had created space for authentic connections to flourish. Later that night, after my guests had departed, I stood at my living room window, overlooking the Chicago skyline, reflecting on the profound lesson of the past year. Family I had discovered was not about shared genetics or legal documents. It wasn't even about shared history, though. That could be part of it. Family was about who showed up consistently with love and acceptance, who celebrated your victories without jealousy and supported you through defeats without judgment. In walking away from the table where I had never truly belonged, I had found my way to a different table altogether, one where every seat was earned through love rather than assigned by birth, where each person chose to be present rather than appeared out of obligation. The journey wasn't complete. Healing rarely follows a linear path, and certain triggers could still activate old wounds. But standing there in the quiet of my home, surrounded by evidence of the life I had built through determination and resilience, I felt genuinely at peace with my story, including its painful chapters. Those experiences had shaped me, but they no longer defined me or limited my capacity for connection and joy. The adopted girl, who had never quite belonged, had finally found her true home, not in a physical place or family name, but in the certainty that she was worthy of love exactly as she was, without condition or qualification. And in that knowledge lay a freedom no rejection could ever diminish. What about you? Have you ever had to walk away from people who couldn't see your worth in order to find those who truly appreciated you? Drop a comment below sharing your experience. And if this story resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and share with someone who might need this message today. Remember, true family is about love and respect, not blood. And sometimes the family we choose brings more healing than the one we were given. Thank you for listening to my story, and I wish you the courage to create your own table where everyone is valued for exactly who they are.